right, Pete Thamel is here. He's on the Game Day podcast. He is on Game Day itself. He is on the ABC broadcast of the NFL draft. That's why he's here right now. What's going on, buddy?
Kevin, how are you?
I'm
Christmas
great.
week. Let's go.
Let's go. Fired up. Did you know I guest hosted your podcast in October? Are you aware of this?
I'm aware of this.
I knew the funny thing. So it's you and Reese Davis who do it. And I'm watching the Miami Cal game. And Reese his voice is on its last legs, and he's just going and going and going. It's like 1 a.m. At one point, I'm staying at my mother-in-law's house. At one point, my mother-in-law comes upstairs into the attic where I'm watching the game, sees I'm watching a live game at like 1 a.m. And she was just like, "What are you doing?" And I couldn't explain it. I just couldn't explain the ACC and all of the things. Why is Cal playing Miami at 10 p.m., whatever, any of that. But then Reese loses his voice. And then the next day they're like, "Can you host this podcast?" And I thought, wow, I did not know. Hearing Reese lose his voice would lead to another job opportunity the next day.
Yeah. Do you want to know the difference between Reese Davis and I? Why he's wildly successful and I'm just getting by? So we were at that game day at Cal. It was awesome. It was epic. It couldn't have been a better environment. And I went to the Stanford game that afternoon because Cal was a night game. Then I went to the Cal Miami game. And at halftime, I was like, man, I'm really tired. I'm getting out of here. Now, we had woken up at like 2:45 and had a long day of TV. Nobody's going to feel bad for you if you have a long day of TV. I'm going to feel bad about that. But anyway, Reese, I think ended up getting asked to do that game late, and I saw him about half an hour before kick, and I knew he kind of had a little throat thing. And talking for 3 hours is like pretty hard to do on live TV. Talking for an additional 3 hours later that day when you're sick is very difficult. So I went to bed. Reese continued to call a very good game. Ended up being a favorable outcome for your Hurricanes. And unfortunately, I can assure you when that game ended, I was asleep.
Well, I felt almost bad for him because the game was getting progressively more amazing. It was 35-10 after a Cam Ward pick six that NFL scouts have been talking about for a while. But then Miami starts to come back, and Reese is losing his voice as the game becomes amazing. And he was so good. He was so good. Really good. And I just feel like that, again, that's the difference between you and I and him, is that we would be like, and he was just like a total pro. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, he is the ultimate pro. And that day certainly showed it. I lost my voice at the draft last year, and this is what I learned. There are the people who actually talk for a living, like me who only occasionally talks, there are like wild remedies. I went to the ninth mile of Detroit to on the recommendation of someone. It might have been like someone sent me to Greg McElroy. I got something called Singer's Spray.
Okay.
And I would love to tell you, like, it worked. Like, I don't talk that much. So I just really had to like hammer my throat with some stuff and then speak for 90 seconds and then just go back in the trailer and do fine. But there is no more terrifying feeling in television when like the light goes on and you're on the air and you have no idea if your voice is going to work. Like it just might like not fire. So
incredible.
Yeah. But Singer Spray, highly recommended. And I will be make sure I'm getting 9 hours of sleep all week here.
So Joe Buck,
it's going to be cold again.
There you go.
Yeah.
Joe Buck was on this show a couple of months ago, and I asked him, I don't know why. Oh, he had to push back because his voice felt weird, and then he cancels anything, obviously, when his voice is feeling weird. That's the bread and butter. So a couple days later, he's feeling better, so he comes back on the show, and he said that one of the guys in his crew, it's been with him for a long time, was in Bon Jovi's crew and taught him Bon Jovi's voice method, which and my producers can help me on this. I think it's something like lemon tea with cough drops placed in the tea, if I'm not mistaken, and just get that going before Monday Night Football game. So this year, maybe we'll get that going for you, Pete.
That's good. It was like a really fascinating window into the people who like, I have to talk 4 hours every day. What do I do when my voice is in peril? And I had to talk for like 4 minutes over 2 days. So it wasn't like that big of a deal, but it was like a very interesting window into like just the voice. You learn a lot about the voice. When you don't have your voice, it's a very like, it's very humbling, I think would be the best way to say it, right? Because you're the Yes. So anyway, I like coughed through one of my hits and then McAfee goes back on and you could tell he was like, I got it. Put the camera to me. And he was like, Pete, you got to lay off the cigars. And I was like, yeah, That's just what I'm doing here. Just what I'm doing here. So.
All right. Tell us what you're doing on the ABC broadcast itself. Yeah. Star-studded. You're the insider. They're going to come to you when? They're going to cut to Pete Thamel, who's going to have a great voice because he's got plenty of sleep. He's learned Joe Buck's voice trick. What's going to happen when Pete Thamel's on camera?
So we have a couple game days, so we'll certainly be talking about these guys. And I think the ABC broadcast, which is most of the game day crew, is an interesting perspective in a lot of ways because we haven't been out there talking about these players over and over and marinating them. We talked about them in the fall, and then we all kind of disappeared and covered basketball and did our own things, and we're coming back. And our broadcast is much more predicated on the person than the player. Yeah. So you're not going to hear a lot about 4-eye and hand in the ground and punch technique. You're going to hear more about, hey, he was Cam Ward was an overlooked 0-star wing T quarterback who went to Washington State, and you're going to get the backstories of that. So it is the draft that my wife would want to watch because when someone wins the Masters, she's like, is that his wife? Where did he meet her? What did that, it's more of that type of a thing than it is the hardcore Mel 3 down, let him go kind of a thing. But it's a very fun broadcast, and we get a lot of pictures of Kyle Williams as a high school quarterback, and you get the snapshots of these guys and their journeys, and I think it's kind of gratifying. I almost consider it for me, it's like graduation. Covered them as recruits, cover them as college players, cool. And then it's go off and be great, and then we'll have another crop. We'll have another crop next year,
and then. The next stage is you cover them again when they become GMs of their college in 10 years. That's just that'll be the next thing.
Hopefully that's if you know them, it always helps, right? And look, man, the world is, my joke, Kevin, is that chaos is job security for me, right? I'm certainly not rooting for chaos, but it's happening. And it doesn't appear like it's going to stop. One day in mid-May, everything's going to settle in here. It's just college athletics has been just a series of uneasy truces. And this is maybe a bit longer of a truce, but the only thing you can sure about rules being made in college athletics is someone is right now trying to break them or get around them or figure out a way to end around them. So it's just sort of this constantly fascinating / infuriating / dizzying cycle that keeps us plenty busy here.
Do you know what's funny? I'm a big Formula One fan. And there's a couple of books by the guys who design the cars. And one of the things I think about all the time that relates to college football is there's this guy named Adrian Newey who said he designs all the best cars. And they said the really bad car designers, when they get the rules, look at what they say. Okay. The good ones look at what the rules don't say. And then just start attacking that and say, oh, they didn't say anything with the floorboards. We're just going to do this. And the best college coaches in this era are the ones who go, oh, you guys aren't prohibiting this. Here we go. And then all of a sudden you've won 10 games because you figured out what the rules don't say. And that to me is modern college football. And this house settlement, people thought, oh yeah, there's going to be a cap. Yeah. Okay, guys. Okay. Yeah. I'll see you there. We'll get right on that.
You haven't been paying attention.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a generational cycle of rules being made and ways being found around them very quickly. And then new rules being made to cut the end around. And then it happens again and again and again. So, the logical people who are looking at it from 30,000 feet think, well, why don't they just follow the rules? And it's well, they could, but they haven't for 100 years. So the notion of them starting to now is a little bit, I am skeptical. Let's put it that way.
I agree. All right, let's get to the draft. You mentioned the storylines. What is your favorite storyline in this draft? Could be anything. Could be a player. Could be a player who's rising. Could be. Doesn't matter. The thing you're most looking forward to a story being told is what?
Yeah, I think it's simple. So I do a lot of draft work during the season, which means that I'll call, Alabama's playing Georgia. Yeah. So I'll call a dozen scouts and say, hey, what do you think? Who's good? Who's not good? So it's actually good to get the because these guys have studied them in the off season. And then usually by mid season, they have a pretty good feel for where they are. And it's a funny tent pole along the way for me. I guess mile marker is a better term along the way, because you're okay, where do they end up? Where were they? What was sort of the consensus in mid-October, and where do they end up? And some scouts sort of follow along. Some have a lot of conviction. You get some fascinating takes, all of which I rub back in the faces of the guys who Sauce Gardner's just a second rounder, like that kind of a thing. And like, look, there's like an argument for that. Like, he's the taller guy, like there's always rationale behind it. But I appreciate the guys' conviction, but like that just like if you just follow the groupthink and the mocks, it's not fun for me. So I would say this all season long. This has been a bad quarterback draft, right? Yep. Like, just generally speaking, no offense to Cam Ward in Miami, he'll be the first pick, and he's earned being the first pick. But like Reese and I had Matt Miller on this morning, and I said, all right, Matt, where would you have had him last year? Like, if he had this production, and he said 7th. Oh, you're grimacing, Kevin.
I'm texting my producers that Matt Miller's banned from this show. That's all. No,
that's fine. That's fine. No problem. You can stay fiercely partisan. I would tend to agree with him. He's 7th. If I didn't think he would have been 7th, he would have been between 5 and 7, right? Okay. So in that realm, I will just say this: like, no matter how you slice it, with Cam being an excellent prospect, like, this is not nearly the quarterback draft. So my favorite storyline is the NFL facing its massive quarterback deficit. What would you say off the top of your head? 8 teams need quarterbacks?
Probably.
And there's 6 to 8?
Probably,
all right?
Yeah.
So you have this massive glaring need that's the engine of $1 billion business. And then you have this like massive void compared to last year, which was historic, but still generally this is like feeling Kenny Pickett-ish, right? Like where we are for the crop of quarterbacks in this draft class. Now, Cam Ward's better than Kenny Pickett, but like, you know what I mean? Like, in terms of a crop. So I can't wait to see if these NFL GMs and owners, because the owners get in the conversation with first round picks and quarterbacks. Absolutely. That's where they show up, for better, for worse, usually for worse. Will the NFL in its front offices have the discipline to draft the quarterbacks in the proper place where they should? Now, I'm certainly not rooting for these guys to get drafted, but like the fact that we could have 1 quarterback go in the first round or 4, to me just speaks to this really compelling cluster between 20 and 45 of probably where these guys are going to end up, or where these guys are going to end up going.
No.
Can I break some news? Can you just pause?
Please. All right, just so behind the curtain, this is what happens when you interview a newsbreaker, an insider, is that Pete had to take a call, put me on mute for a minute and a half, send the tweet about a portal guy, and now we resume. That was amazing, Pete. Thank you.
Yeah, our podcast producer says I have breaking news face. Like, she can see it like when it happens. She has to deal with a lot of that kind of, especially like November. And you can see yourself on this too. So it does look pretty. The whole thing, being a newsbreaker is just a generally socially awkward profession. Right. Because like time is unfortunately of the essence, and you have to interrupt a lot of conversations, a lot of like, I'm lying next to my kid's crib at night and somebody calls me and it's like, do I take this? Do I not? There's a lot of like bad social decisions that come with being a newsbreaker, including interrupting podcasts. So I apologize.
I'll say this. For that. So my wife works at the Wall Street Journal, and she is frankly one of the best investigative reporters on earth. She covers CEOs and Wall Street and all of that stuff. Yes. And the one thing is, we always joke, like, we're glad we're married to journalists, because we get like, she'll just sometimes she'll just have to like step outside for a dinner and just not come back. Like, sometimes it just happens. And I go, okay, all right, I'll get the ravioli. We'll box this up. It's fine. It's once in a blue moon, but I get it. I understand it. All right. So long story short on the quarterbacks, for me, I think Cam Ward is frankly closer to Jaden Daniels than most people think. And I don't want to go down that road. I do have a question about a ceiling here in a second. But for me, I think Shedeur is better than Kenny Pickett. So I think that like people were fair, sort of comping Kenny to Shedeur when the Shedeur starts dropping. People are talking about the Steelers sort of waiting for the value quarterback and how they did that a couple of years ago. I think Shedeur is better than Kenny Pickett. I think where you get into trouble is Jackson Dart and Tyler Shough. And I know people really like Tyler Shough. Tyler Shough's going to be 26 in September. And I understand Daryl Morey talked about this a couple years ago with at Sloan about Joey Dorsey. When you're 25,
Joey Dorsey. Wow, I did not expect a Joey Dorsey.
Well, you never know when you're going to get on This Is Football. But at Sloan, he was talking about how like age is a real thing in the draft, and we don't put enough emphasis on it. The fact that Ryan Williams like turned 18 this offseason Shows you he's a little different.
He was only 17? Ryan Williams?
Why didn't ESPN mention this? Why am I the first ESPN person to mention that Ryan Williams is 17? But that stuff matters. And imagine what Cam Ward would look like at 25 and 26. Like that Taylor Swift matters. And for me, Jackson Dart, and I know I shouldn't, Pete. The end of that Florida game, I think, was the worst sequence of any first round pick in their draft year that maybe I've ever seen. He was just throwing in a quadruple coverage over and over and over again. He threw essentially 2.5 picks. And I don't know his decision making. I don't know. I like the arm talent and all that stuff. I don't know about the offense. It just feels like Jackson Dart is not a top quarterback to me. I mean, that's the guy who, if he's in last year's draft, we're not even talking about in the first round, or people are falling in love with him. So that's.
Do you think clearly Shedeur goes before Jackson Dart?
I think he should. He should.
That's fair. Do you think he will? Because I think that's an interesting question here.
I don't know. Kalen Kaler had a really good story today, last week, about Shedeur and just how many teams have fallen out of love with him because doesn't have the quarterback's mentality that a lot of these old GMs and coaches and stuff. It was something we've talked about. He was on my show a couple of weeks ago. Like, he has a defensive back's mentality, not a quarterback's mentality. And he talks about this, and he wants to emulate his father, and he doesn't like to study other quarterbacks. He likes to study defenses and his father and how his father played, and then flip it around. Like, I don't think that those are the kind of things that some teams want to hear in draft rooms, interview rooms, in combine rooms, at the Senior Bowl, whatever, and at pro days. And so I don't know. I mean, I can't. I always go back to something, Pete, a couple of years ago, where it was I think it was the Kenny Pickett year, where Ian Rappaport in like November had a thing about how there were no good quarterbacks next year, and there was an anonymous scout line that's like, yeah, there's no first round quarterbacks, so wait till the coaches get involved. And I've always thought, like, if that's the reasoning, just kick the coaches out of the room, because the coaches are the ones who fall in love with these guys, and they say, oh, I love his moxie. Or it's the old school guys, the Dave Gettlemans, who say, you know what? I love that Daniel Jones went and competed at the Senior Bowl. He's my guy. Like, you shouldn't be making decisions off of that. And so this is not specific to Jackson Dart or Shedeur or anybody. It's just that when you have 4 months to think about quarterbacks, which you have to have a decision on every year, weird decisions are made. It's
the NFL verse itself. That's just what I told you is like the storyline to me that's the most interesting. Our friend and colleague Mike Tannenbaum has a great observation that I've cribbed a few times over the years. He says, what if the draft was, February 5th?
Yep.
Just like it is in most other major sports, right? Like, basketball season ends, it feels like, wait a minute. I think the basketball draft happens during the finals sometimes, or right after, usually, right? Like, it's like a week after. So what if that actually happened? It would be fascinating. You can't do this, obviously, but it would be a fascinating case study of, would big mistakes be made because of the underwear portion of the the draft? You cut all that stuff out, and executives are not focused on it for so long where they can't come in and mess it up. And then look, like, in a lot of these cities that are struggling, the owners get involved because of what the media says about the draft. And that's real. And that pressure is real. So I am actually hoping, my hope for this draft, which, look, it's not a great draft, right? Like, I know that's probably not like, it's just not it's not a great high end first round of the draft, but I think it is a great draft, second round to fifth.
Yes.
I just think there's a lot of, like, for a college guy, it's actually a great draft, right?
Yes,
because these are all like names, and these are names that are going to fill roster. But just holistically, this is not a high end. This is just not a high end draft. But I do think the beginning of day two, if we only have one quarterback or even two, could be one of the most compelling day twos of all time, because the caliber of talent that could end up going, 33 up, right, should be really, really interesting. And then, does the quarterback need happen, and you trade up, and where does the jockeying go, and how does that, if there is discipline, how does that then reveal itself with a day to ponder all this? So I'm looking forward to that, and if you had told me a year ago Tyler Shuck would be in these conversations, like, again, he made a great decision. If you're a transfer quarterback and you go to Louisville, you will throw for 5,000 yards, right? Like, there are death taxes and Jeff Brom's quarterback statistics there's very little guaranteed in college football, especially, right? But they are going to huck the ball around, and I am just happy for Tyler that he is healthy. Finally,
for sure.
And there'll be all the jokes, I'm sure, all week about playing Brock Purdy and this and that, but he was in his prime considered to be of this talented ilk. And that's why I ended up at Oregon. And that's why I got second and third chances at really, really high end places. Because of that, he just couldn't stay on the field. So it will be really interesting to see if the NFL, where availability is obviously, a huge factor in how they look at these things, goes. I wish him the best, because he is certainly, I broke the story that he was going to Louisville last spring, and it wasn't like, oh my God, this good quarterback's there. It was like all those retirement gifts, go fishing, get a job, like LinkedIn profile and everything. So I give him a ton of credit for making a great decision, seizing it, and getting to this point.
I love that. By the way, you're talking about the depth in this draft, or day two. Everybody comps to the 2013 draft. The 2013 draft had Travis Kelce and Lane Johnson, and Honey Badger and DeAndre Hopkins, and like guys who defined their era. So like, call it a bad draft, and as far, okay, like you said, only Lane Johnson was a top pick in that draft. And by the way, he was a third tackle off the board at number 4. But you can get franchise cornerstones in this draft. All right, give me a guy college coaches love that isn't being talked about enough in this draft.
So I love the running back class in this draft. That's not like a novel take. I did one of those anonymous scout things from the Senior Bowl, and a scout had a great point. He said, this is almost like 2 running back classes in one draft, 2 running back drafts in one draft. The running back is so talented. So when you sent me my homework assignment earlier on what you're going to ask me, I went to my friend Field Yates' top 200, and I just went from 100 on here, and I have 3 names for you, actually. So I didn't want to pick 2 offensive guys. I think you can get a ton of value. I would be very excited if I was a fan of a franchise that needed a running back, and you get into the 3rd round, because there's going to be a bunch of really good guys available. There are starting running backs in this draft in the 3rd round, 4th round, maybe even 5th round. The name I like is LeQuint Allen from Syracuse. He had 64 catches last year. He had 16 rushing TDs. He ran for over 1,000 yards. He had 4 receiving TDs. In an era where if you're picked in the 3rd or 4th round, you're probably going to start as like a 3rd down back, and then you're going to go in. He's also young too, so if you want to make another Joey Dorsey reference, we can.
There we go.
But he's a younger player who really came into his own very quickly this year. Wasn't on anyone's draft radars going into the season, and sometimes those guys take a little while to get traction. But I think the diversity of his skill set, with his production, with his raw talent, makes him a very intriguing player for me that you could get on day 3, and I think is very good. Did you know much about LeQuint Allen? Was that a surprise name for you?
I had not really watched anything about him in this cycle.
All right. I am convicted on LeQuint Allen. Somewhere along the line, it might have been pre-Senior Bowl. A couple of scouts had flagged him for me as just someone who is interesting, especially because of the pass catching aspect. Like, if you're gonna, everybody needs a trait, right? What's your pro transferable skill trait?
Yep.
And I think that is a strong trait.
That's again do one thing well.
Yes, I think I like in the draft, I like to look for players from losing teams. I think the draft inherently is biased against players from losing teams. So I am going to take Azareye'h Thomas from Florida State.
Yeah.
I mean, going into the season last year, like, people pegged him as a 1st round corner, and the team's play was poor. His was not. He's, I believe, just turned 21 and not going to be a ball hawk. I think he only had 2 picks the last 2 years, but he is disruptive. I think he had 17 PBUs the last 2 years. He is long. He fits sort of the modern paradigm for an NFL corner. It's just, again, I can't explain the biases against guys like that, but they are there and they exist. And I think if your team takes him in the second round, he's a guy who walks in and starts right away and is very good. And your bonus pick is at receiver. I love Savion Williams from TCU. Mm-hmm. The people at TCU were very excited. They did not say he was Quentin Johnston, but they said, early on, and they won 9 games last year. They had a good season, but I think it was almost like a quiet 9 games. Yep. And he's big, he's long, he's versatile. He's a guy who you could get in the third round and can have an instant impact for you. So those are 3 college guys coaches like, guys scouts like, that I talked to over the years that I think could be sleeperish type guys.
Great.
The college guys are always biased to production, Kevin, right?
Yes.
Like we are not, you ask any college person, we're not traits people. We're like, oh man, his 3-cone. Like we've lived it and seen these guys and seen them produce, seen them in big moments. So we're going to be biased to the guys who have done it. And these guys on different stages and different phases have done it.
100% agree with you on that. I don't want to get into their Restrepo debate, but that's the kind of thing. I don't know. I don't understand how he ran a 4.8, but I do understand that he was always open, always found holes in zones. So I don't know.
Every time.
I'd have him on my team, see if he can't play through camp. Hey, skip it around here for a second. So does the NFL care at all about portal movement and even why a guy moved in any way? So I'll give my spiel here that I've done a million times. GMs have told me there's 2 things that are really magnified in the portal NIL era. And one of them is there's no such thing as a guy who's been de-recruited anymore, which as we remember, you used to go to Saban as a 5-star. In January, he'd say, you're my favorite linebacker I've ever seen. By August, he would say, you're the 8th linebacker. You've done nothing here. Everybody ahead of you is going to be an all-pro. Start learning the very basics, right? You don't know
anything.
Get in line. That doesn't happen anymore because first of all, Saban's gone, but there's this fear of the 8th linebacker going, oh man, these guys are kind of jerks. I'm going to go play in South Carolina or Tennessee. I guess you can't do it in SEC. I'm going to go play at Purdue. I'm going to go play at Minnesota. I'm going to go play at Michigan, whatever.
You can do it in SEC, just not after the spring.
Okay, there you go.
You can leave after the season and go to another SEC school. You can't leave after the spring.
Okay, good note there. That's why Nico had to go to the Big Ten.
Correct. It undercut his market, which was already cut.
And then the other thing is that, and this is sort of minor, and it kind of makes them laugh. So a lot of guys in draft meetings now who want to be pitched on what the team can do for them because they've been doing that for 3 years now. And the GMs kind of laugh and say, that's not really how this works. And then they kind of move on. But do you feel that NFL teams care about a guy's story in that regard? Because I just think at this point they say, hey, these kids are capitalists. They want to play football. We don't really care unless they got kicked off the team 3 times in 3 years. If they're just kind of going around to the highest bidder, I don't think the NFL gets that offended. Is that, how do you kind of square that at this point?
So, again, this time of year, the NFL scout sort of gets roasted a little bit, right? Like, oh, the scouts, what do they know? Oh, the scouts, they picked that guy. How could, one thing I respect a ton, Kevin, is the depth of the scouting process, right? And like, I'm giving my quick scout spiel before I get to the answer here. So in 2017 or 18, I spent a year for a story on Yahoo with the Dolphins scouts, and I wasn't there the whole time, but I stopped with them at each sort of step of the way and just learned like the process of how it works. And it's been a very instructive thing for me going forward. And one of my sort of takeaways, and the scouts might bristle when I say this, is that scouts are really a lot like reporters, right? They show up at these buildings. People don't necessarily want to talk to them, and they have to ask questions. Like it used to be, you'd go and you'd be like, "Oh yeah, he's a great left guard, and he can do this." And I watched him on the hoof. Now you have to look him on the hoof, but really, it's like, okay, what's his character like? Is he nice to the lunch lady? Is he good in academics? Like you have to go and ask like hard questions, like what's his off the field, his nightlife, et cetera, et cetera, and what they ultimately go try to find, like if you have to put in a fortune cookie, is does he love football?
Yep.
And will he be a pain in the, will we have to motivate him or will he be self-motivated or the basics of the core of what scouts look for? So if a kid leaves South Alabama to go to Tennessee, metaphorically, just because those two have been in the news, and he improves his lot and he gets a big check, nobody's going to like begrudge him. If you've move, but the aggrieved, the place you left is probably the best place to go for information, though, right?
Right.
So if no, I mean, it's just like real.
Truly,
so
yes.
They're gonna call, and like the strength coach might be a little guarded about their, two-time all league guy who's like, his pictures on the side of the stadium and is up in the locker room, but the dude who left him high and dry, they're going to be like, well, I can tell you he missed this many classes, and so you are leaving a trail wherever you go, and how you've treated people along the way, how you've acted along the way, how you've been in the weight room, especially along the way, that's going to matter more than just general movement. I think general movement is accepted in this landscape of where we are in how it all in how it all works. So like, will Nico's move be a conversation in the draft room about Nico? Yeah, like I think so, right? If they think his camp steered him wrong, they would have a conversation about his camp. Now I'm assuming he'll have a traditional agent buy in and all that stuff. So maybe some of that like nonsense won't matter as much. But will they be calling every single person from Tennessee to find out what he was like there? And did he go to every lift? And did he go to every study hall? And, did he fall asleep in meetings, or was he attentive in meetings? Like that will all reveal itself in there. But look, like the NFL, it's not the pickiest organization when it comes to dudes. If you can play, history has shown us they're gonna look past a lot to do that. So I don't think modern portal movement, because it's so pervasive, is going to have an impact. Now, if a kid stays somewhere 4 years and is like, some of that just shows like stability. I think by the time you transfer for the fourth time, people are like, well, this guy's just running for something, right? Like there's a threshold there of you're trying to better yourself, but at the same time, like, can this guy stick around? Does he have like the ability to build relationships? Does he have the ability to, does he love football? Can he fight through adversity? Or like the main questions the scouts are in these buildings trying to answer, much more so than like, does he have a strong hand punch or whatever? Because look, I could watch every Kevin Clark left hash third down from the -30. Like you can watch every one of them right now. Like I can call it up. All that stuff is so accessible. It's really like the scouting of the person where that is going to be like filed away in. And, I think that the NFL does a pretty thorough job with that.
As Steve Keim once said, if Hannibal Lecter ran a 4.3, they'd just diagnose it as an eating disorder and move on. They would just say, that's not that big a deal.
That's a good line. I've never heard that.
No, real quick, I want to get you out of here. But no, from my perspective, the portal is helping the NFL because all these quarterbacks, Jackson Dart, would not have been in Lane Kiffin's offense. Cam Ward, they would have had to project him from Incarnate Word. We're not even talking about Washington State. Yeah. We're talking about Washington Incarnate Word State, I guess. And the Titans get a franchise quarterback because of it. Two quick ones for you. Number one, do you think level of competition is the gulf is growing between Big Ten, SEC, and then ACC and the Big 12? Because the G5 now, they didn't have a first round pick a couple years ago. And then one of those guys would have been Osiris Torrance, who obviously went up from Louisiana to Florida. And so it's a bit of a misnomer. Some of these guys get developed in the G5 and go to the Power Four. Does scouts care? Are coaches noticing? I think I heard a stat the other day that Arizona State had one combine guy, and we're talking about a Big 12 champion. They're just not what we're used to. Miami's a bit of a different deal this year because of what they were able to do in the portal and Mario's kind of threshold for talent. But are you seeing a gap there, and is it growing?
And there's a difference. I had one of our stats hitting info people who are all ninjas, by the way, look up something last year at the combine, the number of G5 combine invites and how they tracked it. It looks a lot like my 401k right now. in the way the red arrows dipped as it went on here. And I just think that I know like there'll be Gray Zabel. There'll be Mike Green, who was a drop down,
right?
And there was one other G5 guy who was projected here that I could probably find because I have like a bunch of this stuff up here. But there was one other logo that wouldn't. Oh, Ashton Genty. probably shouldn't forget about him because he's going to be like a top 10
by the way,
pick. And
I asked him in the Super Bowl, I said, how did the teams tamper with you? And he said, they just called. I thought we were more sophisticated. He was like, no. He's like, guy on staff will just call you. I thought we had like a system. It was like, it was like all the president's men that meet him in the parking lot. No, just, hey man, you want to play? You want to wear XYZ color?
An AAC coach called me the other day and he was just like, he's like, nobody's even pretending anymore. He's just like, they just call. It's that where you come from still matters. And by the way, credit Ashton Genty for a great career decision, right? Mm-hmm. Because say he went to Kentucky where his OC went. So I'm just going to that's an easy SEC example. Is your line going to be there? Is the quarterback going to be there? Is the scheme going to fit? Are you going to fit? Like, there's just a million variables when you go up. And look, he would have been paid 7 figures. Like, that's not a mystery. And he was probably barely paid 6 at Boise. That's an estimate. He probably ended up nosing above that. And so for a kid, I can't say I would have been disciplined enough to make that decision at that age, right? So for a young man to do that and have it pay off, I think is pretty cool. Do you know the Gray Zabel story of why he didn't leave North Dakota State?
No, I didn't leave. No,
because he would have left his farm.
Beautiful.
He's a farmer. He had just gotten a mere 3 hours away from Fargo. He had just gotten a hold. I think he's like leasing a farm. I don't know, like farm, how that stuff. I don't know the farm lingo, but he had like a bunch of acres of cotton. He told me this summer. I wrote it this summer, and he was just like, "Yeah, I don't want to be that far from my crops." So I got offered high 6 figures, but I said, you know what? I'm going to stay here and be high crops. And look, there's been a tackle drafted from North Dakota State in like 3 of the last 4 drafts. It's a very high number. And his whole thing was like, I want to leave my boys and you can do it from here. And he was 100% right. Like, and you give him credit for that. I have not checked back in with Gray to see how the caliber of the crop, if it was a good year or not, if it was a strong year or not. But, I don't think that's going to be his primary income source in the near future. So he doesn't have to worry about it. He said he used to take all his teammates on hunts after the season, which I could imagine there was. He had a good line. He said there was a lot of shooting. I don't know if there was a lot of hunting. I think was summing up his teammates out in the wilderness there in the Dakotas. So give those guys credit for doing that. There are still different ways to do it. You don't have to go up. And in some ways, having the whole program built around you, if you're a skill guy at one of those places, you're a quarterback at one of those places, that can matter. Like Seth Hennigan will get drafted, 4-year starter at Memphis, certainly could have gone, there's always some low end P5, G5 that can do this. So to answer your question about Big 12 and ACC, I think we're at an interesting fork in the road of that. Right. And I don't think because of rev share, it's not like all of a sudden there's an even playing field, right? But they're going to have, all those schools are going to have, if they fund it, $20.5 million, which is so for 15 for football. So say you only have 12, that's a lot of money for Boston College to pay players, for others to pay players. And what I'm seeing now in the portal and talking to coaches is money is obviously the biggest commodity, and that's what people are chasing. But after you chase your tail for a little bit and it doesn't work out, you chase snaps. Yeah. And so I can't tell you that it's not like if you're at Baylor metaphorically in the Big 12 and you're great, you have to go to Texas. Yeah. And the payday seemingly wouldn't be that much more now. So to go, right? Whereas with NIL, just what your collective could raise. And this is picking on Baylor, but if you're just at a Big 12 school and you could go to Texas, like it would assumingly be a big jump. So I think some of that stuff evens out a little bit. I do think like everyone's going to transfer. Like, I'm not saying transfer is going to calm down, but I think of very good players, there's going to be an acknowledgement soon that like, if you stick around and see it through with the coaches and teammates and the scheme that you're in, it's probably going to be a better barometer for success than if you're chasing around. And if you combine that with being paid a similar amount and having similar finances available. Yes. But like generally financially, I'm not naive. The SEC and the Big 12 are running away. Like it's just what it is right now. And, I've been calling it the Power 2 for 5 years.
Yeah. Me too.
But I'm not going to just like write the other ones off if they're funding it. If you're spending $12 million on football, you're just not, that's a lot of money, right? To pay high school kids and college kids, you're just not going to just wilt yet. Now, after another round of TV contracts and things separate and cap numbers go up and all that stuff, we'll see where it is. But I just don't think, next year, like you're going to see like that gives those leagues to me a little bit more of a stick in this thing.
Yeah, and there'll be some consolidation, but I've said this a million times. I'd be surprised. No shots to anybody if Purdue and Maryland were in the final form of college football and Clemson and Florida State, Miami and Texas Tech were not. So I think that will all be revealed over the next few years. Pete Thamel, draft this week, ABC, Game Day podcast, regular game day in the fall. Thank you, buddy.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.